Bronwyn, so this would be, if there is a loss of at least one Teal seat we know of, this would be a silver lining at least.
Yeah, there's every possibility that we can maintain Bradfield, that Kooyong may flip. The question is what happens to the absentee votes, which usually favour the left of politics, whereas the postal votes favour the Liberal Party. And there are always many more postal votes than there are absentee votes. But it's how far you are ahead by the time the absentees come in to see which way it'll go. But I'm very hopeful that the so-called Teal representation will be halved.
Oh, well, at least some of them will lose
and to see Adam Bandt, to see him go would be justice. He only ever got there because of Liberal preferences, and to take Liberal preferences away and see him lose would be justice.
Indeed. Well, I think this is something the Liberals should do in all elections, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Preference the Green last. Now, Richo, what do you think? Do you think we are going to see Adam Bandt lose his seat, and what do you think is behind this rejection of the Greens?
Well, first off, it'll be many a dry eye if he does lose his seat. I don't think there'll be too many people weeping at that loss, and I certainly won't be. When you look at what's happened with the Greens, look, they basically get 10% of the vote every election. It might go up 1% or down, but it never varies much. And so once they get to a seat like Melbourne, that's not giving themselves much cover. And, if the swing's on, they're going to go. And obviously with Sarah Whitty, she's done particularly well. I can't see how she'll get pegged back by postal votes or anything else.
Well, I heard that she barely even campaigned and she wasn't given any resources or funding by the Labor Party. It was just an under-resourced campaign. I mean, you imagine if they actually would have put proper funding into that. Now, Bronwyn, we're seeing Liberal donors, including billionaire Robert Milner, also stockbroker Angus Aitken, refuse to keep donating to the Liberal Party unless they see change. This was a story in the Australian newspaper today by Matt Cranston. Now, this isn't surprising, Bronwyn. Who would want to throw them their hard-earned millions of dollars at a party that's in utter disarray?
Well, they're both sensible people, and they certainly don't want to see the Liberal Party disappear. They want to see it function properly. And I watched the language that was used. It was quite nuanced language, I thought. And I certainly, look, I can simply say, we've been here before. Well, we've had resurgence.
That might be quite useful advice for you to share, Bronwyn. Tell us about the time you were last.
I was in the Houston campaign, and it felt like this last one. It really did. And Houston was meant to win that election. And of course, Keating won it with a big vote, 87 seats out of a smaller parliament, big vote. And it, to me, raises the question, are very large majorities a blessing or a curse? Because if you look at the way, and I just did a little chart. If you look at the way big majorities suddenly get dashed, you've got a much more difficult backbench to handle. You've got much more difficult issues to handle. And the voters seem to turn against them. So when Paul Keating won with 80 seats, John Howard next time got 94 seats. But his then majority went down to 80 because of the GST. He got lucky for the next two elections because we had the Tampa, and believe me, we were on the nose in 2001, and then the Tampa happened. And we got lucky again with Mark Latham in 2004. But in 2007, in comes Rudd with 83 seats. And then he loses and goes down to 72, and so it goes. It does move around.
I understand.
So don't ever write it off. And we've got 1 million people who are willing to have their say on what went wrong and why it was all terrible. It was terrible. It didn't have a proper narrative. It didn't spend the whole time talking about what we would do to bring down the cost of living. When it came to the petrol, halving of the tax on petrol, that was right because this was an ingredient, but it had to be spelt out how it would work and others. And then talk about what was in the wings, what's coming next if you re-elect these people. None of that was done.
But Bronwyn, I've got to get to Richard, so just a quick answer here. But we are looking at 6 years at least of Labor. I mean, if they have 90 seats now, you can't win that, and you can't pick up 40 or so seats in 3 years' time.
Paul Keating would have said that in 93. He would have thought he had 2 terms. He didn't. And when John Howard was re-elected in 2004 with that great big majority, he thought he was going to be there for another couple of terms too. He wasn't. So predicting politics from when you cop it, and we did cop it. We copped a hiding. And deservedly so, I have to say. But that doesn't mean to say that what the Liberal Party believes in and stands for, and we need in this country, a solid opposition. And so it's a question of getting behind them, not saying, oh, I'm going to stand back and just cry out and say it's all too hard. And people who are committed to a cause and want to see something, and Graham, you've been there, you know what it's like. You've got to get back in and fight.
You know, what are your reflections on what Bronwyn just said?
I agree with much of what you just said. Look, it's going to be the case, I think, that, you know, people are going to write terrible things about Peter Dutton and how he was a failure. But the failure is not just Peter Dutton. I mean, there's a whole party here who went along with policy prescriptions that the mob were never going to wear. I think, Bronwyn has been around long enough. She knows what policies you can sell and what you can't. There's a limit to all of it. And I think she's as well qualified as anyone I know to list them. And so you can bet that's what she was doing. But, you know, hubris sometimes overtakes us.
And what do you think, Richard? Do you think we are looking at 6 years of Labor, 9 years of Labor now? What's
I don't think anyone can ever predict 9 years. I think that's going way over the top. But it would be, given this lead, very hard to peg it back in one election. So it is a reasonable thing to say that Labor's got 2 in the bag for this. It's not a certainty, nothing is, but in politics. But I'd have to say it's going to take a hell of an effort to beat Albo next time.
And what about Albanese's cabinet, Richard? Do you think he's going to do a big reshuffle here? Who are you hearing that he's going to demote?
Well, I don't think that he's out to change too much. So it's not a matter of looking at who he wants to demote. I think he'd much prefer to take almost all of his ministry back. He doesn't want controversy. He doesn't want fights. He doesn't want drama. He just wants continued smooth administration.
Well, what
He's
about
been delivering
a couple
that,
of new faces?
and he wants to keep delivering in that.
Who do you think will be elevated then?
Well, I'd hate to start nominating too many of them, but I think people like Ed Husick should certainly be big-time cabinet ministers up. Their roles should be increased because I think that they're very talented people. So I'd pick someone like him and say he should be advanced no end. But that headline, Labor factions fight over cabinet, it was ever thus. You know, we always go to war over that, but it'll settle quickly. Anthony's now got so much power, so much respect, that he'll basically get whatever he wants.
Yeah, but he's going to be sensible. He knows anyone he sacks becomes an enemy. And when you've got a big backbench, you don't want enemies. So he'll want to have basically stability in what he's got now.
Bronwyn, just quickly before we've got to move on, who do you think should be the Liberal leader now?
It's not a matter for me. I don't get a vote. And believe me, nobody in the party room would thank me for expressing a point of view because whatever comes out is going to be what the Liberal Party has to be behind to get in there and fight for being holding the government to account, as we always say.
You know what? I think your words of wisdom are so good that I think you need to become an advisor to the Liberal Party, not just on, them picking up what you say on Sky News, but I think you need to actually get in there and advise them, because they sure as hell need it at the moment. All right, Bronwyn Bishop, Graham Richardson, great to see you both.